Hey guys, Thunderstruck here, and Michael Venom Page is fighting Jared Cannonier this Saturday. So I'm just gonna get right into it and talk about this little breakdown I did for both of them, their styles, and how I think this matchup's gonna play out. And since it's about, their fight, I'm probably going to be leaving stuff out that I don't think is going to be in the matchup. This is mainly about them. However, Michael Venom Page, as we'll see, is, the Michael Venom Page show, right? So everything he does, it seems like he gets to do, because that's just sort of the nature of fighting him, is that a lot of people, I guess you could call it, like, I don't know, like his aura farming abilities or whatever, right? That everybody just ends up playing his game, but, regardless, that means that kind of, yeah, anything he can do, he will eventually try to do, which is, why, if you go back in his whole, like, arsenal of strikes, it's kind of just whatever. Like, he'll throw spinning wheel kicks against dude who's, like, jabbing 3 seconds ago. He doesn't, like, need to... Not that he doesn't need to set things up, but it's weird, and I will get into it. I just think there's a weird thing about the nature of fighting Michael Venom Page that means you sort of just watch him do a lot. Even guys like Ian Gary struggled in, finding their own openings against him, their own ways to, like, force their fight. It's very hard to force a game plan on a guy like this. And I think Jared Cannonier is going to struggle a lot. Sorry to give that away. But regardless, he's extremely difficult to hit, lightning fast. This is very much just like commentator cues. Daniel Cormier is like somewhere on the spectrum, and he hears somebody say lightning fast, and that's like, that's how he picks up on little social cues, and he goes, "Oh, that mean he really speedy." Unpredictable strikes and ridiculous feints. His strikes are, I think, unpredictable is kind of the right word, because it's not necessarily that, like, I mean, he can predict them, right? It's just that the people he's fighting are going, "Oh my god, I'm fighting Michael Venom Page. Michael Venom Page is so unpredictable. What am I gonna do?" If you call somebody unpredictable, right? If you're, preparing for Trick is 2+C, and you keep telling yourself, "Well, this guy's style's ridiculous. I don't know what he's doing," and you're not actually, like, trying to figure it out, you're not going to. And it's actually going to be a lot harder for you. And that's, again, my fifth way of tying this all back into the, Michael Venom Page show or a farming situation, is that if you tell yourself he's unpredictable, if you tell yourself he's lightning fast, that he's impossible to hit, it's going to be harder to hit him. And his feint game is really, really good. I don't know. I guess I didn't really realize that, because I've watched all his UFC fights live. And he would, do cool feints and stuff, but there's some sections in here that I'm going to go into that I think are really, really interesting. Regardless, his strikes per minute, 2.5. He's very low output. His striking accuracy is relatively high, but honestly, it's going to look a lot better tonight, I think. I would say that his past opponents, all of his UFC opponents, have, like, an average height of, like, 6'3", and he's 6'3", but I think he excels when he's fighting guys that are a bit shorter than him. Strikes absorbed per minute is pretty low, and honestly, he has not been hit clean in the UFC. Maybe once. I think Charbot threw a head kick, but it wasn't like a clean head kick, right? Like, everything he's getting hit with is getting deflected by a shoulder or caught on one of his noodle arms, his worm arms, or it's just, like low impact leg kicks, like lead outside leg kicks or whatever. His striking defense, 55%. I have no idea how they measure that, because I don't think he's being hit with 45% of the strikes that are thrown at him. But I guess we'll just have to sort of see how that plays out against Jared Cannonier, because you don't really want to have a striking defense of 55% against Jared Cannonier. However, the strikes absorbed is definitely on his side. It's all bait. Everything about Michael Venom Page is bait. Whether it's his aura farming, his feinting, his stance, his style. Even the way he looks is like it's baiting you into hitting him, because he looks like a worm. That's right. I photoshopped his face from the same picture on a worm. Isn't that awesome? Oh my god, he put him on a worm. Isn't that awesome? He's bait. I put a hook on him. I drew the hook. Isn't that great, guys? stanceness. Extremely bladed. You guys know that, right? Constant rhythmic bouncing, low hands. That's like the traditional, like, oh, I'm a karate fighter sort of stance. However, one thing I see is that while recently he has his feet pointed forward a lot, every once in a while he'll have his feet pointing like straight in front of his torso, which is something you don't really see that often. But it allows him to like really quickly move like forward and backwards. I think like the having your heels pointing in the direction like sort of allows you to explode backwards really easily. Feint burnout is like it's kind of like the nature of his feint, right? Because he's constantly bouncing. It's not just about sorry. I just realized there's like five different ways I could go with this. But like when it comes to like the rhythmic bouncing, right, where he's like up and down, he's like sort of floating on his heels back and forth just a little bit, an inch forward, inch backwards, inch up, inch down. It's not just about like faking a direction that you're gonna go or being difficult to read per se. It's also burnout. It's that you're constantly watching him, flap his hands, move this way, move that way. It's that you see it 1,000 times, and then you're just like used to it. That's the issue, is that you actually really don't want to get used to any of these things he's doing. You want to be alert. You want to be high alertness, right? But once you've seen it for 15 minutes straight, or 10 minutes straight, or 5 minutes straight, your eyes just start like not focusing on it anymore. And then suddenly, that inch forward of movement is like an inch closer to a strike on you that you didn't pay attention to because you're just like not looking at this very closely. And manipulation of range. That's the last section. It's very cool how he does it. He has like elite awareness of his range. He will be like just out of range and then just in range. And it's always just barely like on these like little sweet spots where if he wants to throw at you, he can close the distance really fast. And if he wants you to throw at him, he has a lot of time to react to it. That's the other thing about his bladed stance, is that he's naturally just sort of farther away from his opponent. So if somebody throws at him, they would struggle to land very cleanly because he would have a lot of space because, they're almost always going to be headhunting given where his hands are. So, stanceness, part 2, right? Square stance, bladed stance, you understand. But it's important to like realize how small of a target he is for these people. Like here, you can see the one in the bottom right where his back is facing Sharp Bullet. There's like 30% of his torso is actually available for him to strike. Whereas for Sharp Bullet, it's like 99%. Because Sharp Bullet's just square, or like not square, but practically squared facing him. Regardless. Okay, now let's talk about how he landed on Sharp Bullet so much. Well, the answer is that Sharp Magomedov was terrible. But there are cool things that Michael Venom Page did to figure this out. If you can look, he's thrown a really long lead hand, and Sharp Bullet's hands are nowhere to be seen. Why is that? I'm going to get into it. So, top row. Classic MVP. I don't have to explain too much. But what he does, right, is he gets a little low, and then he flaps his hand. Just up. For a second. And Sharp Bullet raises his guard. And then pulls away, dropping his lead hand. And this is such a funny reaction to this. All Michael Venom Page does is lift his arm. And Sharp Bullet's lifting his lead arm, right, which is good. And then he drops his lead arm. And like leans backwards. And I think what happened is that Michael Venom Page realized that Sharp Bullet doesn't actually block with his hands. He just like thinks he's going to. So it happens again in the bottom row. I mean, this is only like 10 seconds later, or 15, sorry. Michael Venom Page, low hands, lifts his lead hand, and Sharp Bullet lifts his. Very straightforward. And then he drops it. His hand is dropped already. He lifts his hand and then drops it. So Michael Venom Page just punches him, over. And the reason he's like punching so high up is because he knows Sharp Magomedov is going to lean backwards. So he's just trying to throw over the like Philly shell or like low lead hand or whatever. And he gets on the inside. It's really straightforward, but what this is about proving is that it takes 10 seconds for him to get a read. He makes those reads very, very, very quickly. That's why he's so scary. But what he does after this punch is what I think is also really cool. And it goes into the, I don't want to call it aura farming. I don't want to just say the welcome to the MVP show over and over again, but I need something to say. Um, optics, his optics farming is like, he blocks the punch right after, and in the same sequence, he steps on the outside leg and trips, like throwing Sharmagomedov over his own leg, making him fall to the ground. And it made it look very, very impressive. Oh, holy shit. Um, I I don't recall if they actually they didn't count it as a knockdown, and I know the commentators didn't say it was a knockdown, but I do remember them screaming. That is what I remember. They went, "Oh!" And it's sometimes even something as simple as that that makes the judges look very, very kindly upon you. Just little moments like that. It's how it's naturally scored in Muay Thai is sort of the optics. Like if you're constantly catching kicks and tripping a guy, that's a good look for you because it means even though you're not doing any damage or really anything of note, it's that you look like you have control of the fight. And when Michael Venom Page does things like this, it looks like he has control over the fight, right? That was like my fourth lisp in a row. I'm gonna pause for a second and get some water or something. I'm back. I'm gonna be honest. I didn't get water. I just watched Instagram Reels for like 35 seconds and then realized I should probably just keep recording. All right. Um, okay. Here's another thing: is that every time somebody kicks, Michael Venom Page throws over the kick, and he's done this with leg kicks, which, I mean, that's pretty regular, right? People like to throw over leg kicks, and generally, it's kind of like ill-advised. I would say I would say it was ill advice if somebody was telling my fighter to constantly throw over the top when somebody's throwing leg kicks, but he makes it work for weird reasons. Part of that is that because of his stance, his knees are like always facing their legs, so he can sort of like check while he's moving pretty easily. And the second part is that he's Michael Van Page. Now, he doesn't just throw over leg kicks though. In this little frame on the right, he's throwing over like a teep to the chest, and I think it was meant to be even higher, like a front kick to the face, and he still manages to get on the outside and throw right over it and land on the head. Now, what you will notice, though, because I didn't necessarily do like a full flaws section, and I'll explain why right now. It's because a lot of the things that I would say are flaws are also just kind of inherent to his style. Like, the way he's throwing over the top, he's generating very little power because he's jumping. His feet are off the ground. You don't generate power when your feet aren't planted. Otherwise, everybody would be throwing jumping punches. And you can say like, oh, what about like flying knees? When you're using a flying knee, the act of you jumping is something you do from the ground, right? You're not going to be in midair and then jump again for a flying knee, right? Do you understand what I'm saying? Is that you need your feet planted on the ground to generate the power that goes up to your legs and to your arms when you're throwing a punch. And even if you're throwing a jumping knee or a jumping switch kick or whatever, you're jumping off the ground. Your feet are planted on the ground, and then you move. Whereas for Michael Van Page, he's jumping in the air, and then he's throwing a punch. Or even if he's jumping and punching at the same time, the arm is so many smaller muscles. It's muscles that need to, in some way, have a kinetic chain that goes from there, on the wrist or the elbow or the fucking hand, going all the way down the body into the legs. It's really hard to develop this sort of like muscle elasticity, kinetic chaining, whatever you want to call it, to generate force with a punch when your feet are not on the ground. Regardless, let's talk about this very cool sequence that I like. I numbered them so you guys can see what order I'm talking in. Right. He pumps a jab. He's very tall in this sequence, which I think is funny. He pumps a jab. Ian Gary, stoic as ever, pumps a jab. Ian Gary reacts with a rear straight. I didn't realize he was throwing a 2-1 this whole time, but he was. So, jab, and then he ducks. Ian Gary throws a 2, and then throws a 1. Michael Venom Page slips under the 1 and then lands perfectly on his chin. Very, very cool. But what I liked about this is because we see so many people get into these Michael Venom Page fights where they're very boring and they're very single strike is the other thing. And so it's cool to know that he's capable of making adjustments and firing and slipping under multiple shots in the same sequence and still like finding a way to land. Because the idea is always, okay, what if somebody pressures him and is able to fire in combination on him? But it does seem like he has at least some ways to deal with people that are, I guess throwing punches in bunches, multiple strikes at a time. All right, next sequence. I don't even remember this one. No, I do. Okay. He gets really low. He, steps his foot forward. Very, very classic Michael Venom Page. And you can see Ian Gary has not reacted at all. Ian Gary's exactly where he was. But, he throws the lead hand, connects. Ian Gary just cannot react in time. And then he gets to it, and it looks like he rolls his ankle or something, or he's just using his toes to stop his momentum. Something along the likes of that. It's very interesting, but you can see how his like left knee like rolls here. Regardless, he retreats his lead hand down to his side, and then is sort of bowing at Ian Gary, as Ian Gary is with his newfound Brazilian corner. So going, hey, os. And then Michael Venom Page, horse stance, like charges himself up and then throws over the top. And Ian Gary does pull out of the way. I'm like 99% sure. I've watched this sequence like 100 times trying to figure out if it landed or not, because you hear a little sound, but I think it is just hitting the gloves. Because just from the way that, one, Michael Venom Page's feet are planted, and two, just the arc of the swing itself, you'd think it would just have more pop than it seemed to have had. I think it's just because it didn't land. However, I thought that was very cool, because it's just different ways of seeing how he deals with different guards, different stances, different styles. Here's another sequence. This is same round, about a minute later. He inches forward at the same time as Ian Gary lifts his lead leg to like, he's just covering the distance. He's not throwing a kick or anything. But what he is doing is stepping down. I believe he's trying to jab, but I realize he wasn't. But anyways, Michael Venom Page sees him stepping forward, and he's like, oh, I know where he's gonna land. And so the second Ian Gary lands, Michael Venom Page has already thrown a punch, connects the jab straight onto his face. And what he does next, I really, really like, because he realizes Ian Gary's keeping his high guard to evade the next shot coming. So what Michael Venom Page does is he uses his hand after the jab, he just arcs it this way, and then pulls his lead hand down to land the right hand. I love hand traps. And saying him hand trap is really awesome. Alright, next thing. This is just another, like, him trying to make a read. And, fuck, this would have put him out if Ian Gary wasn't, like, 22 years old. If Ian Gary wasn't a newborn, if Ian Gary didn't have the reaction speed of a 5-year-old, then, this wouldn't have happened. Like, this fight would not have played out the way that it did. But Ian Gary is very, very young. He's got, like, look at that. He's got newborn pink skin right there. Oh, pink skin's not like a slur as he called DDP. That'd be bad. But, regardless, as he's throwing the jab, Michael Venom Page somehow is able to time it so quickly and realize that Ian Gary's putting his weight down. He tries to throw a flying knee, and he would have landed it flush if it wasn't for Ian Gary in the last second hiding his head behind his own, like, arm and shoulder. Very cool sequence. Here again, MVP fakes a jab to the body, uses, and again, hand trapped, right? He's pulling the hand down and then tries to throw over the top. Face disintegrating punch. Okay, Ian Gary is fine, but I just thought it was funny that because I'm trying to like screenshot these frame by frame, that the quality gets lost so bad because of like YouTube and also like just UFC camera quality. Or not camera quality, but like stream quality. It's even if you're paying for the pay-per-view, it's gonna lag as much as a pirated stream. But regardless, Ian Gary's face completely vanishes from this punch. Alright, crunching the numbers. I gave Michael Venom Page like a 75 out of 100 rating, which is ridiculously high. Right. I'm just gonna say this right now, before I even get into the, like, what makes him good, what makes him bad. Michael Venom Page has genuinely terrible grappling decision making. And that is half of fighting. So you'd think I would give him like a 60 because he has really great striking but terrible grappling. Because if his striking is a 50 out of 50, probably, and his grappling is probably like a 10 out of 50. But the problem is that nobody can grapple with him. Not like nobody ever, but like 99% of the time, he's just playing his game. So it's really hard to give him like a low rating when it's like nobody can even exploit his weaknesses very well. So like, what's the point of giving him a 5 out of 100 if the 5 is so good that nobody can deal with it and get to the 95 that's bad? That kind of thing, right? His great movement, elite reaction speed. He makes everybody play his game. That's the reason. Oh god, he's really cool. It's so silly though, because he looks like a worm and he generates no power, and he's so weird, and he keeps fighting at middleweight, and he's old, and he just shouldn't be getting away with so many of the things he does. But because everybody's afraid of him, and he's really fast still at like 37 or 35, however old he is, it just works. His grappling decision making is terrible. I really mean that. In fact, I was watching his interview with Mighty Mouse. You know what? I'm gonna pull it up for you guys. Look at that. Okay, wait, hold on. I gotta pause. Okay, I'm back. Turns out I'm schizophrenic and I made this part up. But regardless, it's clear. Even if you watch his fight with Ian Gary or any of the fights where he gets wrestled, his way to deal with grappling is to just like do the old school like, oh, the ref's gonna stand us back up, where he just clamps onto the guy and then just stays on bottom position for like 3-4 minutes sometimes until the round restarts. He does not have a get up game, and that is terrible. You just can't do that in like modern MMA. But then there's other things, right? He needs momentum to generate power. I've never seen him really like land a power shot that didn't require him flying through the air, which is in a way sort of gives him a bit of a telegraph. If you know what he needs to do, and you say you could take away his legs or what, whatever. Not that it's that easy, but it does make it very clear, like that there are things you can do to sort of negate his power, right? If you're constantly marching him down and you're forcing him to walk backwards, then if he wants to generate a power shot, he has to plant himself or he has to like jump in the air and throw a flying knee. He's pretty low output, which you can say is like his game, but I don't know. I don't know how much that really benefits him to be so low output sometimes. Because I get that like generally he wins the small exchanges, but it also means that all it takes is for somebody else to land one or to get one takedown and suddenly they win the round. If he threw twice as much on Ian Gary, those takedowns wouldn't have won him the fight. Or won Ian Gary the fight, that is. And the other thing is that he is kind of getting older. And so it does kind of seem like in some sequences he's like moving faster than the rest of his body, or he's thinking faster than the rest of his body can really move, and he will like actually fall over himself or trip over himself a lot. We saw Wonder Boy sort of like start to fatigue in his movements as he got older in his career. He would like Wonder Boy would sort of sit idly against the fence or like accidentally bump into the fence. I think it could be the same thing for MVP. And even I don't know if it's going to start now, could be years from now, because he is sort of like young in his career in some ways. Hasn't really taken that much damage, but I think there will be a point when we will see MVP slow down dramatically, and we will see him like really start to trip over himself. All right, okay, guys, deep breaths. We got through the fun stuff. Now it's about Glass Cannonier. All right. I actually think Cannonier is very interesting, and he does do a lot of very interesting things. And I'm serious. I really do mean that. He is an actual stance switching guy who's pretty creative with his limited tools, and he's Jared Cannonier. He hits really hard. His strikes per minute really high, 4.6. That's crazy. Striking accuracy 50%. Strikes absorbed 4.49, which isn't great. Striking defense 56%. That's about right. That feels accurate to Jared Cannonier. Cannonier's weapons. You can't tell. There's not a lot of crazy flying knees or front kicks. He is a guy who throws jabs, and he throws right hooks, and he throws body jabs, and he throws left hooks. And a leg kick, or 20. There's a lot of leg kicks. He throws them from both stances, as you can see. He really doesn't get very low. He doesn't throw calf kicks super often. It's most of the time sort of like kicks to the knees or thighs, which is, fine. I think it works well because because it was his old age. His balance isn't great, which is something I'll get into. And I think if he were kicking that low for like the calf kicks, it'd actually be like a little awkward for him and get him even more out of position. And you can see throwing a lot of these kicks, he's still keeping his hands up as best as he can. You know, a lot of people can sort of get away with their athleticism and speed, and they can drop their hands when they throw a kick because they know they're going to throw it so fast and so hard. But Jared Cannonier usually tries to keep his hands up most of the time, even when he's kicking. Here's his jab. Again, right? He's jabbing, he's keeping his right hand tucked to his chin. It's very just nice fundamentals. It's nice to see. Sometimes he's dipping his head a little bit, other times he's keeping it straight. Sometimes he could be dipping his head a little more, but the issue is that he's already shorter than most of his opponents, because I think he's like 5'11", maybe 5'10". Body jabs. He loves the body jab. This boy loves his body jab. One thing I would say is that I wish he would work the body a little more. You know, he'll throw these body jabs, but it doesn't necessarily feel like he's setting the body jab up for something, right? That he's ever going to follow it up with a big right hand over the top, or he's going to, like, you know, really try to punch the guy to the body when he gets his opportunity. He just sort of does it to score, it seems like. Because, you know, again, with his height, it's just very hard to land on people when you're punching so far upwards. They have a lot of time to pull away, do the tall man defense. So he negates it by hitting the body. And on that note, like I'm saying, just wish he would hit the body even more, because he seems to be doing well when he does. All right. The right hand. I kind of just got pictures for things. For Jared Cannonier, it's very much about what I talked about. That is, you know, what I can necessarily show you on the screen. Because at the end of the day, he throws left hands and he throws right hands. And he likes his big meaty hooks. Again. You can see it. All right, now here we get into something cool. This is called an L step, guys. I don't know if you know what an L step is. So, frame one, on the top left, he retreats his left leg back to his feet, and he steps out to the side. Crazy, right? It's very, very basic, but it's a big deal because it's something 99% of MMA fighters don't do. Jared Cannonier is actually very, very good with his footwork in a lot of ways. The only issue is that he's slow. Well, there's other issues, but I will get into them. So right after he does that little L stance, he goes right back in to orthodox stance. Oh my god, crazy yawn again, and throws a body kick. It's I want to say it's like nothing special because it's very easy to explain, but I don't want how easy to explain it is to undermine what he's doing here, right? What the whole purpose of like retreating in this way and sort of doing these things is that he's giving looks while being a guy who moves at the pace of a turtle. He's still managing to like give different looks and sort of move in different directions and look a little difficult. And he's always staying in position. Because if he was just trying to retreat diagonally, taking like a big like step to the left or whatnot, or if he's just sort of like plodding back, or like not plodding, but like running backwards and then running to the left, he wouldn't be able to fire backwards effectively. The whole point of moving in this way with these like little retreats at different angles is that at any point, if Vettori actually did choose to throw, Cannonier could fire right back. All right, regardless. And I will say that I think part of the reason Vettori didn't throw here is that he did recognize that Cannonier had no openings, which is why Cannonier used the free space to just throw that body kick. All right. Here's another thing he does. Here's him backing up and then switching stances to throw a lead right hook on Kelvin Gastelum, and he lands it, and then he switches stances again. Just very cool. It's straightforward. It's not as crazy as like, Michael Van Page using like 10 minutes of setup time to land the big one, but it's neat, and I would say it's like a hope-inspiring thing. You know, you're like, if you want to tell yourself that Jared Cannonier can win this fight, then seeing things like this, that he has a good understanding of stance and range and stuff, is pretty good. Because Ian Gary does switch stances, but I don't think he switches that much, and I don't think he's very effective when he's switching stances, whereas Jared Cannonier is proven to be effective. And so if he decides he wants to land leg kicks on, a guy like Marvin Vettori, he'll switch stances just so he can land those leg kicks. And then if he's like, like for instance in round 3, when he realized that he's just doing better when they're in open stance, he just switches open stance so he can land those body kicks. But regardless, Here's him against Gregory Rodriguez. This is him. Very simple. Again, sticking and moving, right? Whole top frame. He's landing the jab, and then Gregory Rodriguez tries to meet him with a rear hook to like catch him as he's circling, but because Jared Cannonier's jab lands way faster than a rear hook, he just Gregory Rodriguez has nothing on Jared Cannonier. And what Jared does, 2 seconds later, he throws it again. But this time Gregory Rodriguez tries to throw a lead hook, but still Jared Cannonier, being faster, he catches it, does just fine. I think this is neat, right? Because you're seeing Jared Cannonier circle all the way around the cage as he's striking, and for as basic as it is, it's something 90% of middleweights don't do. The issue, though, the issue is that he doesn't learn. He did it 3 times in a row, and the third time, not just 3 times like in a fight, but 3 times in a row. And Gregory Rodriguez, the third time, just dips down and jabs him, and Jared Cannonier gets knocked on his ass and loses the round because of it. Here's another weird thing he does, right? Is because in this fight, he's like, oh, Marvin Vettori is a southpaw, so I'm gonna go southpaw, or no, I'm gonna go orthodox, so I can land my big leg kicks on Vettori. Vettori's not gonna see him coming, because if you're used to fighting in southpaw, it's actually hard for people to land leg kicks on you a lot of the time. So, like if they're southpaw, right? If you're like mirrored stance, it's just awkward. It's so explaining stance matchups just feels like I'm making shit up. I feel like a total schizo some of the time. But regardless, right? In the stance, unfortunately for Jared Cannonier, is that his lead hand is never there. This is something we'll talk about. Is that his lead hand is never there, but especially in southpaw, his lead hand, right? His right hand. He's not even like throwing anything. He's not being countered here. Vettori just throws over like around his hand like it wasn't there, and then cracks him really fucking bad. And then here he does it again 30 seconds later. Cannonier throws a jab. Vettori just throws over it, and Cannonier isn't defending himself, and he just gets hit right around the chin, and he gets rocked both these sequences really bad. Happens again here, right? Cannonier just throws a jab, and then same thing. Vettori just throws around the jab, cracks him. Here, again, these are all southpaw, if you notice. Here's Vettori just cracking Cannonier with a jab, and Cannonier, again, just isn't using his hands to defend himself. Alright, sorry to be so negative on Jared Cannonier. I like him in a lot of ways, but man, some of this stuff is really frustrating, because he doesn't learn. And it's also just the truth, and so that's why I'm talking about it. It's just things I'm seeing, right? Pop quiz. What's weird about this? Can you guys tell me what is weird about these kicks? Okay, I'm going to assume you answered because he's leaning all the way backwards. The answer is that. The answer is that he's leaning all the way backwards. Now, leaning is required to some degree if you're kicking really high, but it shouldn't be required for a kick like this. It's just part of the reach disadvantage thing that he's trying to overcome by swinging really far back. The issue is that his torso probably weighs like 120 pounds, and his leg probably weighs like 40 pounds. And that means that he's putting a bigger counterbalance than he is putting on the strike by leaning so far backwards, which is taking all of the power off of this, and also if Izzy fucking caught it, Jared Cannonier would be dead. He would just fall over and die. Alright, here's another weird thing he does. Here's him back against the fucking cage, throwing a leg kick at Gregory Rodriguez. This is a leg kick, right? Like, I watched the sequence. This is not, like, him shelling out for a punch. This is him throwing a kick. And then he just gets hit in the fucking head. Here's him swaying, right? Because he's like very much a head movement guy sometimes. Imavov like throws a jab, and then Cannonier just sort of like leans all the way this way and leaves his hand where it was. The problem with his head movement is Cannonier leaves his hand where it was. Here's him doing it again, right? He just leans, and then Imavov just lands, right? This is a different sequence where he's doing it again, where he's leaning, and Imavov just lands on it, right? Imavov has seen how Jared Cannonier reacts this whole time. Here, Imavov throws a jab, and then what's after a jab? What's after the one, guys? Usually the two, if not another one or nothing, right? And still, Cannonier doesn't put up his hands. He just leans and then gets hit with the two. Oh, here, it happens again, right? Cannonier throws a nice little hook in tight while, like, looking, like, 90 degrees away. And then right after, Imavov just lands him with the two because Cannonier's hands are nowhere to be seen. Here, Imavov just splits open his guard because Cannonier's hands are nowhere to be seen. Cannonier gets hit a lot, guys. Like, a lot. And he gets hit really cleanly because his hands are nowhere to be seen. Here, Carvalho throws a 1, and Cannonier tries to shell up, but it's like his eyes are closed the whole time, or he just doesn't see the punches coming. I think his reaction speed is just terrible. That's why he has to put his hands up when he's kicking. That's why he has to put his hands up when he's jabbing, because he doesn't see the punches coming, so his way of getting around that, the natural way he's developed to get around not being able to react, is just predictively have his hands up. The issue is that he's predicting wrong, or that people are just punching through his guard regardless. Here, Cannonier, or sorry, not Cannonier, Kyle Bahalio, lands a 1, and then just throws a 2. And where is Jared Cannonier's hand here? I couldn't tell you. Nobody could tell you. And yeah, here's the other sequence where he gets dropped. 1-2. Regardless, despite being really, really mean to him, a lot of this is age. You know, frankly, if he were somebody else, he would be able to take these punches a little bit better, and it wouldn't be such an issue. However, it is a flaw, right? So that is the thing I will talk about, right? His big flaws is slow reaction speed. He doesn't adapt very well, and he's super chinny. However, overall, I still give him a 65. Because I do think he's good. And I do think he's actually a lot better than average, which is why at 41, he's still beating half the middleweight division. His fundamentals are really solid. And also, in a way, like MVP, his grappling, well, in a way to how MVP sort of doesn't have to, play, the grappling game, Cannonier's grappling is pretty fucking solid. And so he sort of gets to force the fight where he wants. However, he's only forcing the fight where he wants if he's fighting a grappler. When he's fighting a striker, he usually sort of does the wrong things. He doesn't take the path of least resistance. He doesn't shoot on strikers, despite, if he has the grappling and strength advantage. However, insanely high volume. He's creative with his footwork, creative entries. He's got strong fundamentals, serious power. And it's power that stays, right? That's why he's such a constant threat. Is that he has great cardio, and he keeps his power all 5 rounds. And he's really good in the clinch. He can keep guys that are bigger and stronger than him and way younger, like Nasruddin Imavov, in the clinch for a couple rounds. It's something of note, right? Again, but slow reaction speed. He's vulnerable from southpaw. He's on death's door. He's so old, and he's slow. And despite being high volume, he's high volume of 1s, high volumes of 2s, high volumes of 1-2s, occasionally, but almost never. And he doesn't throw in combination ever. And it's like, if you can throw in combination, and if throwing in combination is a way that helps you get around somebody's guard, why wouldn't you do it? And he just doesn't. So how I think this fight's going to play out? Oh, big stretch. I think MVP is going to put Cannonier down once or twice, or rock him very bad. I think he's going to be able to tee off in a way we haven't seen before. And despite the middleweight strength and size difference, MVP being so much taller, Jared Cannonier already being so low for a guy who's 5'10", or 5'11", whatever. Oh. I think it's gonna be a big deal for MVP, who's gonna be able to throw uppercuts and knees and front kicks and stuff we don't even get to see him throw that often. Get 6'3" dudes. He's just gonna have a wider tool set, and it's gonna be harder for Cannonier to close the distance, and he's gonna get pinged up a lot. And if he doesn't clinch, and I do not think he's going to wrestle, he's going to be screwed. Alright. I guess for now, Flanders Turk out. I hope you guys do choose to subscribe or whatnot, because I'm going to make a big 319 one. Hopefully. What day is it? It's Wednesday. Yeah, I got time. Alright. I'll try to drop the 319 one tomorrow. Maybe even later today. Who knows? Regardless, have a nice day, y'all. See ya.